He just wanted a steak. But what the waitress handed him with the check changed everything. Nobody looked twice when he walked in. Not at first. It was a slow Wednesday afternoon in Fort Smith, Arkansas. Heat shimmered off the blacktop, and the kind of tired silence hung in the air that made everything feel heavier. The steakhouse sat in a faded strip mall between a liquor store and a check-cashing spot. Nothing special, just another spot to grab lunch, pass through, and forget. But Daniel Whitmore wasn't just passing through. He stepped inside wearing worn denim, boots with more years than polish, a faded cap pulled low, and a brown leather jacket that had clearly seen miles. He moved the way older black men learned to move in unfamiliar places, calm, quiet, with no sharp edges. He kept his eyes steady, his voice low, and his posture neutral, not out of fear, out of habit, old habit. The young host barely looked up from his screen. "Table for one?" "Yeah," Daniel replied evenly. "Somewhere quiet, if it's not too much trouble." The host led him to a booth near the front window, table 7. It faced the room but gave him a clean view of the kitchen door. Daniel slid into the seat and let his hands rest flat on the table. His eyes moved, not his head. He was watching. He picked up the menu and scanned it like someone new to the place. But he already knew what he wanted. Daniel Whitmore wasn't just a customer. He was the owner, the founder of what used to be a proud Southern chain, Whitmore's Chop House. Started with one spot in Tulsa back in '96. Grew it into 17 restaurants across 5 states. Then he stepped back, let others run the day-to-day while he focused on operations, partnerships, and, lately, fighting to keep his legacy alive. This Fort Smith location was bleeding. Bad Yelp reviews, slow ticket times, staff turnover, numbers that didn't add up. His team had explanations, excuses. Daniel didn't want those. He wanted truth, unfiltered. So he came himself, unannounced, undercover. The restaurant was half full, quiet, tired. The servers moved like they were walking on eggshells, and the kitchen staff barely peeked out through the swinging doors. Then she walked up to his table. "Afternoon, sir. My name's Jenna. I'll be taking care of you today." Daniel looked up and met her eyes. White, mid to late 20s, hair in a messy bun, sleeves pushed up. She looked exhausted and guarded. "Afternoon," Daniel said. "What do folks usually order here?" Jenna glanced at the menu like it personally offended her. "Ribeye's still decent. Comes with mashed potatoes and collard greens." "Let's do that," he said, closing the menu. "Medium rare." She nodded and walked off without another word. Daniel leaned back. He scanned the room again, slow. There was a man near the bar, big guy, buzz cut, tight polo shirt like he was trying too hard to look important, arms crossed, watching the staff like they were liabilities. That had to be the manager. The steak came out quicker than expected. It was good, cooked right. Plate was warm. The kitchen still had some pride in there somewhere. But the vibe? Still wrong. Jenna came back, eyes low, and refilled his coffee. She set the check down with a folded receipt tucked inside. Daniel waited, watched her walk away, smooth and steady like nothing happened. Then he opened the note. It wasn't a receipt. Written in blue ink, 6 words. "If you're really who I think you are, please don't leave without talking to me." Daniel blinked. Read it again. His pulse didn't spike. His face didn't change. But everything inside him shifted. Across the room, in the reflection of the window, he saw her, Jenna, watching him, but not directly. Just enough to know she was serious. He had come for answers, but now he knew. He was sitting in the middle of something bigger than missing money. Whatever this was, it had roots, and it wasn't going to be fixed with a spreadsheet. Daniel sat still, one hand resting on the coffee mug, the other gripping the folded note under the table. He didn't look around, didn't react. Not outwardly, but the note changed everything. In 6 short words, Jenna had confirmed 2 things. 1, she knew exactly who he was. 2, something bad was happening here, and it wasn't about slow service. Daniel had seen it before, not in this exact way, but in spirit. People working scared, managers hiding things, stories buried under routine. But the difference here was that someone had actually reached out, quietly, bravely. He glanced toward the kitchen again. The big guy, Bryce, if he heard right earlier, still stood near the pass, pretending to read a clipboard. But Daniel could tell Bryce was watching. Not just the food, but the people. Controlling the room with silence and presence. The kind of manager who wanted fear more than respect. Daniel stood slowly, dropped a few bills on the table, and walked toward the front with the check in hand. The host barely looked up again. "You have a good night, sir," he mumbled. Daniel didn't respond. Instead of heading straight out, he turned down the narrow hallway marked "Employees Only, Restrooms." He didn't walk fast, just casual enough not to raise eyebrows. Behind him, he heard Bryce's voice, flat, suspicious. "Sir, restrooms are on the other side." Daniel paused, turned slightly, looking for the manager. "That'd be me," Bryce replied. His tone was sharper now, but still coated in customer service syrup. Daniel studied him. "You free to talk?" Bryce raised an eyebrow. "About what?" "Just a word with my server." Bryce stepped closer, his arms now crossed. "You got a complaint, you bring it to me. You don't pull my staff off the floor. That's not how this works." Daniel looked him square in the face, voice still calm. "Then I guess you'll have to get used to it working different." There was a long pause. Bryce studied him, maybe trying to place him, maybe realizing he wasn't just another customer. But Daniel didn't flinch. Finally, Bryce scoffed. "She's probably in the back, closing up." Daniel turned without another word and headed for the back hallway. He found Jenna carrying a crate of lemons. She stopped when she saw him, eyes widening just slightly, but not with surprise, with fear, with urgency. "What are you doing back here?" she asked under her breath. "Got your note," Daniel said. "Now talk." Jenna looked around, then pulled him toward the storage closet at the end of the hall. Small space, smelled like cleaning supplies and burnt fryer oil. She closed the door behind them and took a breath. "I wasn't sure if you'd read it, or if you'd even still be here." "You said something wasn't right." Jenna rubbed her face. She looked exhausted, the kind of tired you don't sleep off. "Bryce isn't just rude, he's dangerous. Food deliveries go missing. Liquor counts don't add up. Cash drawers are always off, but only on nights he closes. He cuts hours on the schedule, then clocks people out early in the system so payroll doesn't see the truth." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "And no one's said anything?" "They're scared," Jenna said. "We all are. If you speak up, he either writes you up for made-up reasons or just takes your shifts off the board. One server caught him pocketing cash from the bar. She was gone by the weekend." Daniel took it all in, slow, no expression. "Why tell me? I worked at your Bentonville location 6 years ago. You came in for the opening. You probably don't remember, but you gave me a $100 tip just for checking in on a customer who was choking. You said I had initiative." Daniel blinked slowly. "I remember that. I saw your face today. I didn't think you'd come back. Not like this." Daniel nodded once. "I needed to see it for myself." "Well," Jenna said, "you're seeing it." He studied her, not with suspicion, but with a kind of quiet respect. The way a man who's been ignored, underestimated, and written off learns to recognize someone else who's been through the same. "All right," he said finally. "I'm coming back tomorrow, but I'm not coming back as a stranger." Jenna swallowed, then looked at the door. "Then you should leave through the side. Bryce has cameras on the front." Daniel slipped the note back into his pocket. "You gonna be all right?" "I've made it this far." Daniel didn't smile, but he nodded as he walked out the back door, knowing one thing for sure. He wasn't just dealing with bad management. He was dealing with rot, and rot had to be cut out. Daniel didn't go home. He checked into a cheap motel 10 minutes away. Fluorescent lights, peeling paint, front desk behind glass. One of those places that didn't ask questions and didn't offer much more than a bed and 4 walls. Room smelled faintly of cigarettes and bleach, but he didn't mind. He'd stayed in worse. He sat on the edge of the bed, the crumpled note from Jenna still in his jacket pocket. Her words played over in his head. Dangerous, threats, people disappearing off the schedule. He'd always prided himself on building places people wanted to work in, especially for folks who were often ignored or pushed to the back. Kitchen staff, single moms, high schoolers, retired vets, the ones society didn't treat like assets. He didn't run perfect restaurants, but he ran fair ones. This wasn't fair. At 10:17 p.m., his phone buzzed. Unknown number, just a text. "Side lot, by the dumpster, 11 p.m., come alone." No name, no fluff, just instructions. Daniel didn't hesitate. By 10:58, he was there, leaning against the brick wall behind the restaurant, eyes on the shadows moving under the flickering security light. He kept his hands in his jacket pockets, looked like any other night, but his mind was sharp. At 11:03, the back door eased open. Jenna slipped out, hoodie pulled up, moving fast but quiet. She glanced around like she was being followed. "Thanks for showing up," she whispered. "I said I would," Daniel replied. "Did anyone see you?" "No." She motioned toward the alley. "Let's walk." They moved together in silence until they reached the far side of the lot. The hum of a freezer fan buzzed in the background. Jenna finally turned to face him. "I had to be sure you were serious," she said. "Most people would have just thrown that note away." "I'm not most people." "I'm starting to see that," she replied. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small silver key, handing it to him wrapped in a paper napkin. "That opens his locker in the back room, black duffel bag. He keeps a second phone in there, burner. I've seen him use it when he thinks no one's looking." Daniel's brows lifted slightly. "You've been watching him." "Someone had to." "You know, this could put your job at risk." Jenna scoffed. "My job was already at risk the minute I started asking questions, but I can't keep watching him walk all over people. Cut hours, pocket cash, fire good staff just for not kissing his ass." Daniel nodded slowly. "You're brave." Jenna shook her head. "I'm tired." He understood that. Too well. The kind of tired that sits deep in your bones. The kind of tired black folks know when they've had to prove themselves 3 times over just to get in the room, and then stay quiet once they're there. He wasn't about to let her carry that burden alone. "I'll go in tomorrow," he said. "Look around. If what you're saying holds up, I'll take care of it." Jenna hesitated. "Bryce doesn't play nice. Neither does Glenn. If this blows up, it won't be just about me." "Glenn?" Daniel asked. "You mean the regional guy?" She nodded. "He hired Bryce, checks in once a month. They talk like they've got secrets." Daniel's jaw set. Glenn had been with him for years, trusted, quiet, never flashy. But Daniel had stepped back in recent years, and Glenn had taken more control than he probably should have. "I appreciate you telling me," Daniel said. "I'm just trying to give you the full picture," she replied. He started to walk away, then turned back. "Jenna," he said, "if you get pushback for talking to me, you tell them exactly who I am." "And who's that?" "The man who built this place." He walked into the dark, his boots echoing off the pavement. In his pocket, the key pressed against his leg like a weight, proof that someone inside still believed the truth was worth the risk. Tomorrow, he wouldn't be a stranger anymore, and neither would the lies hiding behind that kitchen door. The next morning, Daniel didn't drive home. He put on the same jacket, same jeans, same scuffed boots. He didn't want to look like a boss, not yet. That image gave people permission to put on a show. What he needed was truth. He walked through the restaurant's front doors right before lunch rush. The same host was working, headphones barely hidden, tapping at a cracked iPad. "You again?" the host asked without looking up. Daniel nodded. "One of those weeks." The kid waved him toward a booth without another word. Daniel sat down, but he wasn't hungry. Not for food. He scanned the room. Staff moved faster today. Tension still sat in the air like steam in a kitchen, but something had shifted. Jenna moved differently, not relaxed, but lighter. Still watching her back, though. He caught her eye as she passed. No words, just a slight nod. Then Bryce stepped out from the back. Polo shirt tight across his gut, clipboard in hand, pretending to check something. But his eyes locked right on Daniel. He approached the booth slowly, that fake manager's smile barely hanging on. "Back again?" he said. "Didn't think you'd be a regular?" Daniel leaned back. "Food was solid. Thought I'd see if it holds up 2 days in a row." Bryce chuckled, but it was tight, forced. "Well, if you got any notes, let me know. I've got a reputation for running a tight ship." Daniel's eyes didn't move from his. "I can tell." Bryce lingered for a beat, then walked off. But Daniel knew, he felt it. Bryce knew something was off. The kind of tension that builds when someone's about to lose the control they thought they owned. Daniel finished his meal in silence, left cash on the table, walked out the front door, then circled around to the back alley. Jenna had done her part. The mop bucket was propping open the side door again. He slipped in without a sound. The hallway was empty. In the back, the staff locker room was quiet. Just the low hum of an overworked soda fridge and the buzz of a flickering light overhead. He found Bryce's locker, tall, dented, labeled BL. The small silver key slid in and turned with a soft click. Inside sat a black duffel bag. Daniel unzipped it and found gym clothes, a bottle of cologne, and tucked in the side pocket, a burner phone. No case, no passcode. Daniel scrolled. A list of contacts saved under initials. GT, LM, HQ, WED. He took photos of every screen, every message. Then he pulled open the side pocket of the bag and found something heavier. Cash, rolled tight with rubber bands. Small denominations. No labels. Looked like someone had been stashing register money off the books. Daniel zipped it back and stepped into the manager's office next door. Same sour smell of old takeout and stress. He opened the second drawer, Jenna's tip had been right, and found the little black leather ledger. A name written inside the cover, Langley's Daily Book. He opened it. Pages of handwritten notes, inventory logs that didn't match invoices, alcohol entries with missing quantities, staff tips rounded down, hours scratched out and rewritten. He had his proof, but before he could slide it into his jacket, the door creaked open. Bryce stood there, arms crossed, no smile now. "You think you're slick," he said. Daniel stayed still. "I should have known the way you walked in here," Bryce continued. "You didn't look scared enough to be just some customer." Daniel looked him dead in the eye. "You talk a lot for someone with dirty hands." Bryce stepped in, closing the door behind him. "You break into my locker, my office, you think you're walking out of here like it's nothing?" Daniel stayed calm, still holding the ledger at his side. "I'm not walking out as a customer, Bryce. I'm walking out as the man whose name is on the lease, the man who owns this place." Bryce blinked, caught off guard. Daniel stepped forward, voice low, measured. "You've been stealing, threatening people, covering your tracks like a rookie. But here's the thing. No matter how quiet you kept it, the paper never lies." Bryce's jaw tightened, his fists clenched, but he didn't move. "You call security?" Daniel asked. "The police? Go ahead. Let's all compare notes." A long silence. Then Bryce laughed, bitter, tired. "You think this ends with me? You think I did all this by myself?" Daniel squinted slightly. "Glenn." Bryce nodded once. "You don't want to know how deep it goes." "I already do." Daniel walked past him, ledger tucked into his jacket. No fear, no hurry, because now he had more than just a hunch. He had receipts, and once you've got receipts, the cover-up always starts to crumble. The phone rang the next morning just after 9 a.m. Daniel was back at the motel, sitting at the chipped desk, sorting through photos of Bryce's burner phone and the pages he'd scanned from the black ledger. He wasn't tired, he was focused. The kind of focused you get when you realize people you trusted have been quietly tearing down everything you built. Caller ID showed a local Arkansas number. No name. He answered without greeting. "Dan, it's Glenn Tate." Daniel didn't speak. He let the silence hang. "I heard you've been poking around Fort Smith," Glenn continued, his voice slick with forced calm. "Didn't think we'd need to talk like this, but here we are." Daniel leaned back in the chair, eyes fixed on the photos on the table. "You should have called sooner." "I didn't know it was that bad." Daniel chuckled once, sharp. "No, you just didn't want to know." There was a pause on the line. "Look," Glenn said, dropping the smooth tone just slightly. "Bryce was never polished, but we needed numbers to stabilize. He was getting it done." "You mean he was stealing?" "I didn't know about that part." "Don't lie to me, Glenn, not now." Silence. Daniel's voice stayed steady. "You don't hire someone like Bryce without knowing what he's willing to do. You brought him in to do the dirty work while you kept your hands clean." Glenn tried to pivot. "Dan, come on, we go way back. You know how tough the market's been lately. Stores are closing left and right. Labor's expensive. People don't stay. You step back and suddenly all the pressure's on me. I had to make decisions. Decisions that got people robbed of hours, tips, peace of mind. You're making this personal." Daniel sat forward. "It is personal. I built this company to give people a shot, people like me who got passed over, and now I've got staff scared to ask for breaks because they don't know who's watching." Glenn's voice hardened. Look, I don't want this to get ugly. I'm trying to keep us clean here. Daniel almost laughed. Clean? You've got cash changing hands, backroom deals with liquor reps, forged logs, and a burner phone full of proof. You're not clean. You're just quiet. Another pause. What do you want? Glenn finally asked. Daniel didn't hesitate. I want you gone. Glenn scoffed. You can't make that call. You're semi-retired. I'm still the founder. My name's still on every legal document. You think the board won't listen when they see how deep this mess runs? You go public with this, we all lose, Glenn snapped. The company's name, your name, it'll drag everyone down. Daniel stood, phone still pressed to his ear. Then I guess you should have thought about that before you sold us all out. He ended the call. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't need to. By 2 p.m., Alicia Knox had everything she needed. Scanned documents, screenshots of texts, audio notes, and the burner phone Daniel dropped off that morning. This is enough, she said plainly. They'll fold. Good. But Dan, if you go all the way with this, you're not just firing one guy. You're blowing up your old structure. You ready for that? Daniel looked her dead in the eye. I don't want that old structure anymore. That night, Daniel walked into the Fort Smith restaurant at closing time. No jacket, no disguise, just himself. Staff glanced up, confused, but not scared. Not anymore. Jenna came out from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. You okay? She asked. Daniel nodded. Meeting time. They all gathered in the dining room. Servers, line cooks, dishwashers, even the teenage host showed up. Daniel stood at the front, quiet at first. You all deserve better, he finally said, and I should have shown up sooner. No one spoke. They just listened. Bryce is gone. Glenn's next. And anyone else who's been stealing or covering for them, you've got one chance to leave on your own. Tomorrow morning, I start rebuilding, and I'm doing it with people who care. He looked across the room, faces exhausted, cautious, but listening. Jenna stood up, Daniel added. Alone. She had everything to lose and still told the truth. That's the kind of leadership I believe in. He turned back toward the kitchen. This place isn't broken. It was just in the wrong hands. Now we take it back. No applause, no cheering, but heads nodded, shoulders relaxed, and for the first time in months, people exhaled without fear. Daniel hadn't just exposed the problem. He'd declared war on it. But what he didn't know was Glenn had one more play, and it was coming faster than anyone expected. 2 days later, Daniel received a manila envelope stamped with a corporate return address and urgent, legal enclosure printed across the front. He was sitting in the motel lobby, drinking weak coffee from a styrofoam cup and flipping through vendor invoices. The envelope was thick, the kind you could feel trouble through. Inside, a cease and desist letter from the company's legal department. Accusations of slander, unauthorized entry into private property, interference with regional operations, all signed off by Glenn's name at the bottom. Daniel didn't flinch. He'd seen moves like this before, paper threats from people who thought silence could be bought with intimidation. But that playbook didn't work on him. Not now, not after what he'd seen. He picked up his phone and called Alicia. He's trying to scare me, he said, voice even. Then you're getting close, Alicia replied. Let him file. That's not a fight he's ready for. Daniel sat back in his chair, staring out the motel window. He didn't want a fight. He wanted accountability. And some respect, real respect, for the people keeping these places alive day after day. So he went back. Not to corporate, not to Tulsa, back to Fort Smith, back to his people. That evening, the restaurant was winding down. Tables were clearing, receipts printing, the kitchen's last fryer cycle hissing into silence. Daniel walked in through the side door. No hat, no disguise. Just the same man who started this chain from scratch and was now here to rescue it from the rot inside. He found Jenna in the back, rinsing lemon wedges in a giant plastic tub. You free for 5 minutes? He asked. She dried her hands, looked over her shoulder, and followed him to the office. He dropped the envelope on the desk. Glenn's trying to bury me, he said. Jenna picked it up and read the first page. Her lips tightened. You think it'll stick? Daniel shook his head. It's a smokescreen, but I'm tired of playing defense. She folded the letter carefully, setting it aside. So what do we do? Daniel looked her straight in the eye. We tell the truth. She frowned slightly. To who? To everyone. The next day, Daniel and Jenna met with a local reporter named Ken Holland, a beat-up notebook guy with a 6-year-old laptop and a reputation for writing what big names didn't want printed. They met at a diner across town. Ken ordered sweet tea and started scribbling before Daniel even spoke. Jenna did most of the talking. She told him about the hours shaved off the books, the threats, the missing inventory, the fear, but she also told him about something else, the silence. The way everyone looked down when Bryce walked in, the way people stopped believing anything would change. And then what happened? Ken asked. Jenna glanced at Daniel. He walked in. Ken looked over his glasses at Daniel. You were undercover? I wasn't hiding, Daniel said. I was watching. Ken chuckled. Same thing if you ask corporate. Daniel leaned forward. Here's what I care about, he said. Not just fixing this place, but showing people that leadership means showing up, especially when things go sideways. Ken nodded, scribbling. 2 hours later, they had a story. By the end of the weekend, it was everywhere. Undercover owner uncovers theft, abuse at local steakhouse. Whistleblower waitress helped expose it all. The article blew the lid off. Staff from other branches emailed Daniel directly, some apologizing, others saying thank you. A few shared stories from years back, other locations, other managers, same playbook. Daniel answered every message, not because he had to, because he knew silence was part of how all this started. And now, it had to end. The next Monday, Jenna walked into the office before her shift and found an envelope with her name on it. Inside, an offer letter. Full-time, benefits, salary, title, general manager, Fort Smith location. Jenna blinked. She read it 3 times. When she looked up, Daniel was already in the doorway, watching. You serious? She asked. He nodded. You earned it. I don't know if I can. Can? You already have. She held the letter like it might fall apart in her hands. No one's ever backed me like this, she said. Daniel smiled faintly. You backed yourself. I just made sure it stuck. That Friday, Jenna led her first full staff meeting. Quick huddle before open. No speeches, just straight talk. What was working, what needed fixing, who needed help. Daniel stood quietly in the back, just listening. No one was afraid anymore. But as the staff began healing and leadership shifted into the hands of the people who deserved it, Daniel faced one final decision, one that would define whether his legacy ended here or just started over. The letter came with no threats this time, just an email from the CEO's office, subject line requesting a meeting in person. Daniel agreed, but on his terms. No boardroom, no office tower, no suits. They met inside the Fort Smith restaurant on a Sunday afternoon, closed for cleaning, but Daniel made sure every staff member still got paid for the full day. He sat at table 7, where it all started. No hat, no disguise, just himself. The CEO walked in alone, tall, mid-50s, polished, but unsure, like he knew the ground he was walking on didn't belong to him anymore. Mr. Whitmore, he said, extending a hand. Daniel shook it, firm but brief. You've had quite a week, the CEO said, taking a seat across from him. No, Daniel replied. We've had quite a decade. I'm just the one cleaning it up. The CEO nodded slowly. We read the article. We saw the documentation. Glenn's been terminated. Legal's working on vendor audits now. Internal policies are being rewritten. Daniel didn't smile. Good. We'd like to bring you back in formally, not full-time, but a seat at the table, guidance, oversight. You're still the face of this brand, whether you like it or not. Daniel leaned forward, elbows on the table. Then you start by showing up for the people you ignored. The CEO blinked. I want back pay for the workers who had their hours cut. I want anonymous reporting lines for every location. I want health benefits extended to hourly staff, starting here. And I want written policy changes in every kitchen by next month. The CEO hesitated. That's a tall list. Daniel didn't flinch. I've spent my whole life being told what's too tall. I'm not interested in limits anymore. There was a long pause. Then the CEO slowly nodded. You'll have it, all of it. Daniel extended his hand. This time, they shook for real. Later that evening, he walked back into the kitchen. Jenna was wiping down the counter. The place smelled like bleach and fresh rolls. He handed her an envelope. She opened it slowly. Inside, a $2,000 bonus. A note with just 5 words. For the day you spoke up. Jenna looked up, blinking back emotion. I don't know what to say. You don't have to, Daniel said. You already said the hard part. Over the next few weeks, the restaurant transformed. Not just in appearance, but in rhythm. The kind of rhythm that happens when people actually want to be there. New hires were trained by veterans who finally had a reason to care. Jenna led with fairness, not fear. Staff meetings turned into problem-solving sessions, not scoldings. And the food? The food got better. Because everything tastes different when you're not cooking under stress. Customers noticed. Word spread. The Fort Smith location was no longer the one to avoid. It became the flagship again. One afternoon, Daniel was doing paperwork in the office when a teenage dishwasher knocked on the door. Theo, quiet kid, hustler, always stayed late to finish without being asked. Mr. Whitmore? Yeah? My mom used to work for you, at the Tulsa spot. Said you helped her out when my brother got sick. Gave her time off. Paid her anyway. Daniel looked up. She always said you were different. Daniel leaned back, surprised, but not entirely. What's your last name? Ramsey. Daniel nodded slowly. Tell her I remember her, and tell her her kid's doing good work. Theo grinned like he'd just won something. That night, Daniel stayed late. Everyone else was gone. The only sounds were the low hum of the fridge and the soft buzz of the exit signs overhead. He sat at a booth with a plate of grits Jenna had made for him earlier. No fancy presentation, just hot grits, 2 pieces of toast, and butter melting in the center. He took a bite, sat back, looked around. This was never just about steak. It was about people. The overlooked, the silenced, the ones who show up anyway. People like Jenna, like Theo, like the woman who worked double shifts with no childcare and never complained. Like the cook who showed up with a brace on his wrist because he couldn't afford to take a day off. Daniel wasn't trying to save the restaurant business. He was trying to save what little honesty was left in it. And maybe rebuild the kind of place where folks didn't have to whisper to be heard. If you've ever worked under someone who misused their power, or if you've been the one afraid to speak, let this story be a reminder. Change doesn't start with a title. It starts with courage. Speak up, show up, and back the people who risk everything to do the right thing.